We are the robots after all, robots. We are the robots after all.
Hey, welcome everyone. We are the Robots After All. I'm Andrew,
I'm Tom.
and today we're going to be talking about the first three anime that we ever saw.
That's right.
Before we get into it, we're going to start a little tradition where we're going to talk about a robot of the day. And Tom, you want to reveal who our robot of the day is?
Yes, our robot of the week, first of all, is Bender from Futurama.
Bender B. Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So we've got some.
Name.
So we got some Bender dolls here.
Bender Bending Rodriguez, right? His middle name is
That's
Bending.
the B is for. Hey, guess what the B is for?
The P in his name stands for Bending.
So Bender is definitely
it's a little show and tell.
Yeah, we got a little show and tell here. So this is one of my main Benders that I have. This guy hangs out on my desk. He's got a little brain slug on him too from the episode with the Planet of the Brain Slugs. And
I was wondering what that was.
And he's actually got the ability to open up his little door there and reveal all his little mechanical workings. So this is one of those like tin toys. It was like a re-release of the old classic 60s toys where you wind it up and it'll kind of walk using some wheels in the bottom, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's got the old school wind-up technique.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've got this little guy because Minnie is better. He's got a little beer in his hand. I think you have one as well, right?
We love the minis. Yeah, I have a Kid Robot version, which you actually gave me. You can see that. It's a little whitewashed there, but you can see him.
Does he have any little treasures inside his compartment there?
No, there's nothing in there, but I think he typically has a cigar, right? Didn't this come with a cigar?
Yeah, he comes with a cigar, and he also comes with the
I think I lost the cigar.
The Egyptian face mask, which was
that's right. I do have the face mask somewhere over here.
Yeah, that's from the episode of A Pharaoh to Remember when he's trying to immortalize himself.
Oh. I think I just saw a clip of that. Doesn't like the statue fall on the pharaoh at one point, and he's like trying to tell him what to say. He's like interrupting him, keeps interrupting him. Yeah, you gave me this, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
This guy's awesome.
Yeah, I went through a pretty extensive Kid Robot phase where I was trying to get all the Simpsons and all the Futurama.
Yeah, so you were definitely obsessed with the Kid Robots.
Yep. Now they're all sitting in a closet.
Really? Oh, need to get those on display.
I know.
Rightfully so. Those were really cool. The Kid Robots.
Awesome, and they're a ton of fun to just buy a few boxes, have no idea what you're going to get, and then especially if you pull one of the rare ones, it's super exciting. Kind of like goes back to the trading card days from when we were kids.
Yes.
And actually, I recently bought a couple of blind boxes that relate to our show topic today, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's dive in.
Surprise topic. Okay, so we're going in the main topic now. Did we introduce the main topic yet?
I think we did, yeah. So we're going to talk about the first three anime that
first
we ever
three
saw.
Anime we ever saw, right?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about why this is kind of a cool topic, and then we can kind of dive in and trade it off. So, Tom and I both, we've known each other for many years. We went to high school together, and we were both nerds who loved anime, even before meeting each other. And if you don't mind, Tom, I'll tell the story about how we met.
Please do.
So I was new to a school that Tom had been going to. He had lived in that area for his whole life, and I was new to the area and was kind of starting a new high school. And in the classic fashion of being a nerd, during high school, I wanted to like have cool anime characters on my books. I used to cover the books with the bags, and then either draw things on the bags or tape pictures to it, kind of thing. And I was actually printing out some Dragon Ball Z characters, and Tom came by when I was at the printer and immediately identified it, knew who all the characters were, and then serendipitously, it was really cool. Later that night, we were both hanging out with a mutual friend. We didn't know this was a mutual friend to go to an anime store. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but
right, yeah. How long were you there before we met? Had you been in?
I feel like it was only a couple of weeks.
It was only a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and this mutual friend of ours was just the kind of person that would just like, friend anybody and do like, hey, come hang out kind of thing. It was like a Friday night hangout where there would just be, sometimes it could be upwards of like 15 people coming over his house. So.
Yeah, but was that when we were going to? That was the night we were going to Thayer Street, though, right? And we took two cars. So yeah, there was a big plan for a big group of us, our group of friends, to go up to Providence, Rhode Island, Thayer Street, which was kind of at the time. I mean, I'm sure it is now, but it was a different Thayer Street, the one we grew up on. It had Anime Crash, which was the big anime store when anime was still very fresh in people's minds, and you could only get it on VHS. And they had a lot of it was like a dream come true for a store for people like us that were so into that media, because you had the figures, soundtracks. That's where I got the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack that I still have, the Japanese imported soundtrack that I think it has 3 discs on it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and just like all the model kits, you get model kits, action figures, trading cards, but the VHS collection, and I remember the guy being pretty nice there too. He was really helpful and informative. And then
the place was super cool, and they actually had Japanese import stuff too. So like, you could get some of this stuff in some of the kind of more traditional stores, like Record Town at the time, which is long gone now. But in if you went to these kind of specialty type shop or whatever, you would actually get Japanese import figures of like Dragon Ball Z and the model kits, like you were saying and stuff. So it was like you could only kind of find it in this spot. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, it was pretty neat because we met in school that day, but we would have ended up meeting anyway. And the real kind of the genesis of our friendship was really around this kind of love of anime that we both had, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, very like meant to be situation in our lives. We're like just two kids growing up, had very similar interests, and we were going to meet one way or another.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I will mention that Anime Crash is where I got that Trunks figure, and I think that was actually an import, and I wish I still had that figure. I don't know what happened to it.
I actually the one that was from like the Irwin era, like Dragon Ball Z figures,
and
they were in like boxes and be like volume 14 or something like that. It would be Trunks. Yeah, I actually still have my original one. I think I remember having to order mine online and like waiting like the 6 to 8 weeks that probably turned into 12 weeks, and you just kind of like put an online order in, put your credit card number in back then, and wonder if like it's a scam or not.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like. And it was I remember it being a Japanese website, but I was so dedicated to get that figure that I was like, let me put my identity at risk.
Yeah, you had to have it. Those were the figures that were very limited range of motion too, and you had the purple hair. I don't think you could even change their heads or anything. Just came with a sword.
I don't think you could even move their necks. I think they were
actually.
I think it was just arms and feet. Arms and legs.
But the model, the sculpting and the material was really cool and like very matte, smooth color.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they were nicer than like Western figures for sure. But
probably not cheap either.
No, I think I remember it being like a $20 figure back then, which was like, an astronomical price. I mean, even Spawn figures were only like $7 or $8 in the store, kind of thing. So anyway,
that's true.
So let's dig into our topic. So
that's right.
As as we were saying, Tom and I both were huge anime fans, and I thought it would be kind of cool to think about how did it first come into our lives, and Tom and I have some overlap there. So we'll kind of reveal the first 3 that we did kind of back and forth, and then the last one we actually share as a main. One of the main movies that we first saw, so we'll talk about that one together. So okay, if I go first with
well, before we do that, do we want to get into the Western franchises before the movie list?
Yes.
Or the
we do want to do
anime.
that.
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
So,
So,
before
do you
we
wanna-
even go into the movies that we really saw first, or whatever we saw first, we wanted to talk about influences that weren't necessarily like anime or Japanimation, if that's even like a word people use anymore. But I know Japan. Does anybody even use that? Is that like?
I don't think so.
You get
I don't think so.
canceled if you say that.
You might actually. That might have been offensive. Well, and the other thing too, being that like we basically watched anime as kids without knowing it was anime. That's like a really kind of weird thing to think, but
and that's kind of what this is about. So we had a list of different shows that came on that definitely had anime influencers. Some even were outsourced to Japan to be animated. So we have Thundercats, Silverhawks, G.I. Joe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I also wrote down Pokemon, which is just blatantly anime. But that came in, like you said,
that was much later.
It was
much later.
Yeah, a lot later. But the first four were late 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Voltron's another one that
Voltron, that's right.
Very clearly anime, and that actually had like kind of giant robot vibe to it. That was like really popular in Japan, but like it was the first time I think the Western world kind of saw that. And then we saw Power Rangers, which again was another Japanese kind of carryover of that giant robot idea. But what's really cool is like I remember in like when we were in high school, I'd go back and watch like Thundercats on Toonami or something like that, and just have the epiphany that it's like this is anime. Like just the animation style, the way that they were repeating frames, you know, trying to save save like animation cost by just like having the same couple of frames flicker back and forth kind of thing. It was kind of a cool epiphany. And then I remember the one that was the weirdest for me was G.I. Joe, because how could G.I. Joe, an American-based, American themed animation, be, Japanese animated? But I think it was just at the time, Japan was known for its animators. A lot of Disney movies even have Japanese animators. So even some of the old school Disney movies have some of that kind of Japanese animation feel to it, or anime feel to it, which is kind of cool. So it was almost like, similar to what we were talking about with us kind of being destined to meet. It was almost like with the because we were 80s kids, we were kind of just destined to get exposed to anime one way or the other as well. But these movies that we're going to talk about, I think, definitely kind of separated themselves from anything that we were raised on, with either Disney movies or these shows, these more kind of kid-oriented shows.
Yeah, and you can tell with TMNT, which I recently discovered and brought up to you before we started recording, that it was outsourced to, I believe you pronounce it Toei Animation. Is it Toei?
I think it's Toei, yeah.
Which animated Dragon Ball, which I thought was, so the first few episodes of TMNT were outsourced, and you can kind of tell the details where I think some of like the turtles were drawn slightly different, and April has this much more anime look to her, much more detailed. But yeah, the turtles have like this weird like line going down their snout, where they don't really, where it kind of changes into like this weird little lump snout. It's I went back and watched it a few days ago just to compare them. But yeah,
I actually recently bought the not to go off topic, but I bought the whole complete series, like DVDs, for like $40, and I was like, there's probably like 200 episodes or something like that.
Wow. Yeah, and there's only like 50.
So yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but yeah, it's quite a few DVDs. I just lost you for a second. Welcome back.
You went to the dark web, the dark side. Dark side.
So do we want to go into the first movie? Do you want to do yours first? You want to dig into one of them?
Voltron's so cool, man. Can you just talk about how cool Voltron is for a second?
I mean, these little robots that combine into a big robot, which the first time you hear that concept,
he's got a giant sword, and he's in space. They have to fight in space. There's nowhere else to fight but space.
Well, he's the defender of the universe, so I mean, he has to be in space. Just by job description alone.
Wait, does he have to be in space to survive?
I don't know. I don't think he does survive. I think that the humans inside him are are his food.
And they have to like regenerate every time.
It was ahead of its time. It was basically the Matrix storyline, but Voltron,
Right.
where the humans were the batteries.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Well,
none of that.
What?
None of that's true. But yes, he was very cool.
Yeah, I love him. I remember having the toy. The toys were amazing, too. Just being able to have each one separate and put them together. But anyway, that's a tale for another time. That's for another robot of the week. You know what I mean?
He's definitely Robot of the Week worthy for sure.
Yeah, Robot of the Year maybe.
Not to be confused with Robot of the Day.
Yeah, which was a very short segment. We got rid of that quickly.
Yeah.
But let's
Maybe
go.
We'll bring it back.
We'll bring it back next time. It's not coming back. Let's go to my first. I guess we'll start with me.
Yeah, go for it.
And I think I got to start with Ninja Scroll. This came to us in '93, and I believe this was introduced to me from our group of friends who also had similar interests. We were kind of like, I don't know, we were the type of people that didn't hang out with anybody else. That group of like misfits, I guess, if we were going to categorize ourselves. But yeah, Ninja Scroll, and a movie like Ninja Scroll really introduced you to the limits that they take their animation, because you're talking gruesome violence, crazy, weird nudity, insects with boobs. I mean, they got it all. I think it's like the spider, right? The giant spider that is just like full on nude at one point or something. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, that kind of brings up the point where it's like one of the first points of what made it different from the animation we saw as a kid is like it blended sexuality in a way, not even just like straight like animated sex, but it blended sexuality in like an imaginative way that would never expect. And in some cases, like especially as like the first time seeing it, you're like repulsed by it. You're like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, what is happening right now? Like, it makes you feel something that's like unique to that particular media that like, nothing else had really done.
Repulse, but also like as a kid seeing that, you're like, this is absolutely insane. You're taking a leap from seeing like the Care Bears and the Gummy Bears and whatever bear cartoon there was. There was more than that, I'm sure.
Gummy bears.
To like samurai slicing off the heads of arachnids and demons.
Yeah.
It's just
while naked.
Yeah, the one scene that's immortalized from that movie is where he takes like the ninja weapon that has like the claws and just goes down the face. And another trope of anime is like showing the attack, having a paused moment, blood spraying, yeah, and then like a shift of each body part in a different direction, and then blood spray. But yeah, seeing that movie for the first time, you're just like, wow, that. And I'm not sure what order I really saw these in. I think we'll probably know towards the end, but seeing this one was just Ninja Scroll is just fast paced. Jubai, I think is that his name? Jubai?
I think Jubai.
Jubai.
Yeah.
Super fast paced, action, crazy, very like strong, squared characters, kind of like Alex Ross style, where it's just like, that's Alex Ross, right? Does the Superman.
Yep.
And very like similar looks.
But all the Justice League, yeah.
Yeah, that was a great one. Do you have anything to add to that? Because I'm not sure what else.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Ninja Scroll is one of my absolute favorites. It was a little bit later for me. I saw it in like 7th or 8th grade. It wasn't one of the first ones that I saw, but it was a friend of mine who actually introduced me to a bunch of great music as well. Like he was like, "Oh, you got to see." Like I talked about the ones I had already seen. He's like, "You got to see Ninja Scroll." And when I saw that, it was actually a bit of a level up in terms of the graphic nature, because it's like I mean, it's basically anime at 100 miles per hour. Like it's got like extreme sex scenes. It's got extreme violence and like gore. And like there's one scene I remember where they're throwing like ninja stars throughout like the forest or whatever, and it just starts raining blood. They're killing all the ninjas to the point where they're killing so many people that there's just blood rain coming down. Yeah. So I mean, it was just, and it was so like those, like what you were describing with like the face getting separated and stuff. Like they introduced these kind of smart ways of illustrating how slick something could be or how like cool something could be, right? Because it's like you could watch somebody, you know, slice really fast, but it, you know, and then like, you know, the effects are kind of almost missed, but they give you the moment to like realize how cool, you know, what just happened actually was. So it's like really fast thing happens and you're like, wait, what was, you know, and then you get the moment to actually process that and then see this like grand effect of like what happened, which was really cool. There's a lot of
when they're putting as much time into it, since it's like a full feature-length film.
Yeah,
it's just like you have like a crazy team of animators. Like I've looked at the credits, and there's just 20 plus animators on one project. So you're getting all that amazing production and animation and music and sound effects. It's just like nothing it goes back to just, it's not something you've ever seen before. I mean, other than maybe like Disney films for like in terms of animation wise. But.
Yeah, Ninja Scroll's a great one.
Yes, and then they had a couple sequels, I think, after that or something.
Yeah, it was
not as great.
Yeah, like the animation style was a little bit cheapened, and like it didn't have the same gravity of like the kind of adventure through. I you know, it's been a long time since I actually watched Ninja Scroll, but I remember it kind of having this weird. It was either like a Dante's Inferno, where he was kind of going through the different layers of hell, facing these different kind of demons,
yeah.
or it was some type of seven samurai like alteration. It was some kind, like thematically it was something that we had like known before, and it was just kind of like a interpretation of that. And I could be totally wrong, but I feel like being something like that.
Like Odysseus, what was this?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like the Odyssey. It was like,
the Odyssey.
Yeah, it was like an interpretation of that, where he had to fight these different.
Had these different challenges.
Yeah. But,
that's a crazy one.
So the first reason why we picked first three even was because I actually saw three all at once.
Really?
It was a Sci-Fi Channel special.
Wow.
Which means that I didn't get to experience the full unedited versions, which is an important point, right? Because like I said, when I saw Ninja Scroll, I saw the full uncut version and I was just totally blown away by.
You're like, wait a second.
Yeah, I was like, there's a lot more to this than what I had seen on the Sci-Fi Channel. Anyway, so the first one that I saw was Vampire Hunter D, the original 1985 release. And this hit me for a couple different reasons. First of all, I mean, the motif of like a vampire hunter was really cool. The spoiler alerts for folks who haven't seen it, but D himself is a vampire, the main character, and like the way that whole kind of that whole idea, and I think, you know, I might have even seen this before I even knew who the Marvel comic character Blade was, or that movie had even come out. So that concept of like, you know, a vampire hunting his own was like a new concept.
He was a half-breed though, right?
He's a Dunpeel.
Dunpeel family. He's like the Dunpeel family. So he was looked down upon, I believe. At least they introduced that more in maybe the second movie, but.
Yeah, like a second-class citizen where, you know, he's not accepted by the vampires because the vampires are very kind of dynasty-oriented, hierarchical, and the humans are obviously, you know, repulsed by him because he's considered like a monster. So even though he is helping people, you know, his profession is a hunter for hire. So he's more of a mercenary. And I feel like in a lot of these types of anime, the mercenaries are kind of thought of as, even if they do have like a good side, like that's something that's revealed later. They're kind of revered as just like, you know, passersby or drifters or that kind of thing. So they kind of have a negative connotation. But yeah, that's a good point, that because he was a half-breed, he was kind of like a second-class citizen. But I mean, the thing that really like stood out to me was a lot of the stuff that we've already kind of covered, which is that there were these moments of just extreme violence where he's going up against giant monsters and cutting their arms, like cleaving their arms clean off with like a giant sword.
Yeah, it's like a scimitar looking sword almost.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I would think that Sephiroth was probably inspired by that character, since Vampire Hunter D obviously predates Sephiroth, but it's similar to that big Masamune style sword.
Everybody loves a big sword.
What's that?
I said everybody loves a big sword.
Yes. And it was also it was very dark. It was very, it just appealed to like that side of me that, really enjoyed kind of more of the macabre setting. And again, a lot of animation is very bright and colorful and happy. And this was like, there's sections where like all you see is like his eyes open or something. It's like pure blackness, and he's just like hiding in the shadows and like his eyes open or something. And you got that kind of stuff maybe with Batman, where and that was certainly cool in its own right. But this was, again, it was another level where it was, he was just killing everything, like rampage. Like there's probably more killing in that one anime than I had seen in like any movie up until that point. Like there's that scene where he's like running through the like catacomb area or whatever, and there's monsters coming at him everywhere. He's trying to save, I think Dolores was her name. And he's just like literally just like swinging his sword like back and forth. It's like killing like, hundreds of monsters. He's like, storming Dracula's castle. Or not Dracula's castle, Count Magnus's castle.
Ooh, Count Magnus.
Yeah.
Like
and I think the other thing that stood out too was that these characters they were unconventional. D didn't really speak much in the movie. He didn't have a lot of lines, and that was part of his character. Whereas most things that I'd seen up until that point, the main character's blabbing and he's cracking jokes and he's, life of the party kind of personality. And D was very stoic and like, man of few words, but, spoke more with his actions. And then you had a villain like Count Magnus, where he's this old elder vampire who's like, he's bored with life. He's like on top of the food chain. He hasn't been challenged by anybody. He thinks he's like completely undefeatable. And that was again, it was a cool idea. Like a lot of the villains that I had seen up until that point were very much like, here's my evil plan. Now let me explain it to you. And also I have this grand idea of how everything's going to be. And he's like sitting there on a throne, like his head in his hand. Like, this bores me. Like, and he would literally, like, I think the first time he faces D, he literally just like his eyes open and he just like shoots D against the wall with like an invisible force.
He's like does so, not. Yeah.
Yeah, just such a badass character. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about like how there were so many firsts in that movie for me of like, things that you just had never seen kind of, you hadn't seen badassery conveyed like that. You know what I mean? Like this idea of like invisible forces and, giant, small guys taking on large monsters with a single sword and like somehow coming out unscathed. It was unbelievable, but it's portrayed in a way that felt very empowering and very, like, it felt believable the way that they presented it, which was really cool.
Yes. So and that's like an older one, 1985, that came out. And I didn't see that. I don't think I saw that until after I saw the newer one.
Really?
I'm not positive unless maybe you showed it to me, but I feel like I never saw that before that one, but I think that's one thing about anime in general too, is you're saying like, I feel like their ideas are only limited by their own like imaginations, because it's like they don't have, I'm sure they have certain production studios that oversee these obviously, but I feel like they're not like going down their throats like, oh, you can't do this, you can't have all this blood spraying, you can't have animation, like swearing, you can't swear in cartoons. It's like they just like threw out the censors and just like, yeah, do whatever the hell you want. Yeah. And when seeing that and since this is about seeing like the first animes we ever saw, it's like seeing that and you're just like dumbstruck at the possibility of this existing in our in the world. When you were like grown up with American television and cartoons and the limitations they had.
Yeah, that like if I imagine it kind of like in a boardroom of people like having a meeting about it, and like someone's like, all right, so what if we had a snake woman, and she's actually a snake, but she's got breasts, like human breasts.
And then they get like ripped off.
Yeah, well, no, but like, and then in the typical like Western boardroom, they'd be like, no, we can't have that. Like, cut that, get that out of here. And in Japanese, in like the anime boardroom, they're like, how about 3 of them? We'll call them 3 witches of Midwick or whatever.
We get more breasts.
Yeah, how about 6 breasts total?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly it. They were just very open to imagination and just like anything goes.
Yeah.
So that's my first movie.
Great. Very good choice. Great movie. My next up is got to be Ghost in the Shell.
Ooh.
1995, this came out. It's a little later. But I was still a young teen. But this is another one where, and I think what lends itself to a lot of these animes, since they are older, we've kind of started kind of in an era of traditional animation. So you're seeing a lot of these and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into them. And there's just that level of detail that, it's a good example is like seeing DBZ's early stuff and then going to like DBZ Super, or Dragon Ball Super, and you're like
totally
seeing the difference of like frame rate, of taking shortcuts, just like the fine details of somebody getting hit in the face and you see like not even just blood, just spit getting like and you can feel that hit. And I feel like Ghost in Shell really showed that level of like the action scenes. They took it to a new level because a lot of the scenes get slowed down and the frame rate just like when she kicks somebody, you see a slight little slowdown and then it's like, then it speeds up and then it's just.
Yeah, the Matrix gets credited with that kind of feel, but it was very anime inspired because anime was doing it before, the Matrix even came out.
Yeah, the slow motion stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I think this one they obviously started using some CG stuff, but it's so
blended well, though.
It's very tastefully done, and you can hardly tell, if any, because the level of attention to detail, like one of my favorite scenes is always that typing scene where you're and again, it's just very adult, so it's you're seeing it as like a young adult and you're just like, this is intense, but I love it. Everything, the music, that like overarching music thing was like,
the choir,
like the choir, that alone just set the tone for the whole movie. And it's just cyberpunk age, robot, sexy, everything you'd want as a young dude.
and if I could say something else about it that I think really makes it special is that it wasn't just all action. There was a ton of political
That's true.
Content. The dialogue is heavy. It's a very dialogue heavy movie, and you've got to learn like who's Sector 7, who's Sector 6, who's Section 9. Like you got to know or Sector 9 or whatever. Like you've got to know who all of these organizations are, and they're just throwing around terminology like you're a part of the world already, as if you have known it all along. And that I've had to watch that movie a few times before I really picked up on all of the kind of nuances of the story, because I was, you're so taken aback by the animation and the action and stuff that the actual story sometimes can take a backseat to that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think it'd be a disservice to not mention that these are all pretty much mangas, and which are, people know what a manga is. It's the Japanese version of like American comics. It's like I'm assuming everybody knows what, typically that would be watching this knows what a manga is. But like, other than maybe Ninja Scroll, I don't know if Ninja Scroll was, but most of them
I don't know either.
Typically have roots in manga, so that story has been going on, and they're trying to like condense maybe a certain part of it. So yeah, it can be a lot to follow. But yeah, that was one of the big ones for me, for sure.
Cool.
I don't really think I have much else to say about that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good pick. That's still to this day one of my absolute favorites. And I think that one, the other thing I will say about that one is I do think that one was directly inspired by our third pick. That is the one that we shared. I think that there's a lot of kind of inspiration in the quality of the animation, the animation style.
Yes.
You know, definitely was a kind of evolutionary step from the one that we're going to talk about in a bit.
And I did enjoy, before we move away from Ghost in the Shell, I did enjoy the second movie they put out as well, and even the live action with what's your face, Scarlett Johansson. I thought that was good.
It was well done. It was very well done. You and I saw the second one in the theater together.
That's right, at Avon.
Yes, which again, another Thayer Street experience, I believe.
Thayer Street was the place to be.
Yeah, that's actually worth talking about just for a second, in the sense that
I'm
going to do it. There's actually nothing special here, but I remember seeing Ghost in the Shell: Innocence, the second one, on the big screen, and it took the concepts, which were already complex and awesome and very Blade Runner-esque, to another level in the second movie. And there was a bunch of like philosophy. They quote like Descartes and like all kinds of just like cool next level cerebral experiences kind of added to the anime. So you had like this crushing action, unbelievably beautiful animation. To this day, I think that's one of my favorite animes as far as the actual animation itself. Like I remember there's one scene where he's like driving in like the Studebaker, and there's like all the lights of the city are like reflecting off the car. It's just very like cinematic, and you know, the fact that they basically built that all from scratch with animation is just mind-blowing to me. But yeah, we saw it in the theater, and seeing it like we had watched, you know, most of our anime on VHS on a small little, because you know back then everyone had 19-inch TVs, was like a typical. Oh, nice. Is that a steelbook version?
This is a steelbook I bought it was a while ago, and I really need to rewatch this movie, but it came with I think what is this? It has the music, the original soundtrack. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this. I really need to rewatch it.
It's definitely worth a rewatch.
I didn't interrupt you, but I had to show it.
No, that's awesome. Actually, it's funny that you have the steelbook version. I remember getting so excited that I finally found a copy of it. I bought it, and I think I bought it at like a Barnes and Noble or something like that. And then the next day I went to Best Buy, and they had one that had a slip cover on it that had like the reflective cover, and I was like, oh, I could have got the nice one. And then I saw they made a steelbook one, and I was like, wow, I have like the worst version of it.
Well, this unfortunately is just the DVD version, and it says it came out in 2008. But DVD, I mean, it's still pretty high quality for what it's worth.
Well, even if you got the Blu-ray, you could just pop it into that case, and
that's true.
Done and done. Anyway, so yeah, that was just an amazing experience to see in the theater, because we had watched it on these small little TVs, you know, these little 19-inch TVs, and they were, you know, 4:3 aspect ratio. To see it in a 16:9 full cinema experience, like I remember it being a sensory overload. I remember walking out of the theater, standing in front of the theater, and being like, things are different now.
What did we see? That's funny. I didn't even think that was the first one. It really was the first anime we saw on the big screen like that. It was a huge event.
It was massive, yeah. And it was so cool that it was Ghost in the Shell. It wasn't even like I think Princess Mononoke had screened in the theater as well, and some of like the bigger ones. I was so glad we got to see that one. That was so cool. Anyway,
yes.
Anything else you want to say about Ghost in the Shell before I move on to my second one?
I don't think so.
All right, my next one's actually probably going to be a quick one. So again, I saw all of these on a Saturday. It was like it was a marathon of these 3 movies, and I just sat there, you know.
That's impressive, yeah.
So the next one I saw was Robot Carnival. And for those, you can actually see Robot Carnival on Amazon right now if you have Amazon Prime.
And it's also, cool. You can watch it for free on Tubi TV. That's how I watch it.
Oh, okay.
And I'll say I hadn't heard of this until you mentioned it. I just want to point that out. But I did watch it.
Yeah, I'll be actually, maybe after I describe it a little bit, I'd love to actually hear, because we haven't even really talked about it since you watched it. I'd love to hear kind of your reaction to it and what you thought of it, because it's the kind of thing where, you know, when I rewatched it recently, it definitely made me think of you. It's very much like something that you and I would appreciate. So what's cool about Robot Carnival, it's actually a series of shorts. And it's not really like, it's one of those things where I would describe it where it's like not going to hold your hand. Like it has what it has to offer you. It has what it's going to show you. And you're just kind of along for the ride. It's not looking to appeal to any particular audience. It's just really artistic expression through these shorts, which I really, really liked. And I'll talk about a couple that I think would really, a couple of the kind of scenes that I think like really kind of impacted me. So I won't go through kind of all of them, but there's one where I think it's one of the first ones where it's a guy who's like building a machine, and he's building a robot, and it's when I'm describing it in these words, it's not going to do it justice, because basically it's like he builds the robot gets sentient, destroys him. Like, oh, wow, what a plot twist! But the way that it's done is so beautiful because it's mostly silent. There's like a couple of little grunts and groans from the character, the human character you see on the screen.
Right.
And there's sound effects and stuff, but there's no actual dialogue. And that has this weird kind of intimate setting that it puts between the media and the audience, where you feel it feels very lonely, but it also feels very like something that you feel very connected to. You're paying even closer attention. Like, I feel like a lot of stuff nowadays, and I was thinking about this as I was rewatching it. A lot of stuff nowadays is like in your face, and it's like, you know, we're very kind of ADD as a society, where you've got to have like every 10 seconds a new image has to flash on the screen kind of thing. And this is like a much slower paced set of ideas that get presented in this animation. Then to couple that idea that it's a slower paced animation itself, they also then put no dialogue on it, so it's like it's as slow as you could possibly make something in a way. Yes. And yet, if you actually sit down and really truly kind of meet it where it is and experience it, it's really magical, especially to go back as an adult. As a kid, I remember not really, it wasn't one that I like really got. I remember watching it and being like, that was so cool, but it was kind of like on to the next one.
Yeah.
that I didn't really appreciate it. I think when I watched it's cool, you know, and even though like you hadn't heard of it and you just recently watched it, in a way I feel like the first time I really watched it was, you know, not too long ago as well, just because I don't think my child brain didn't like really comprehend what I was experiencing. So the only other thing I'll mention is there is one scene a little bit later, or one like story a little bit later, that I thought was really cool, about a guy who makes he's trying to make like a robot counterpart, and he ends up like failing in his experiment, and he leaves this robot, or like just like in an old dusty workshop, whatever. He grows old, and did you want to say something?
I have stuff about that.
All right, I won't spoil too much about that.
No, I've seen it. But
I'm saying, like, if you wanted to touch on that, I'm happy
okay.
to talk about kind of like what that did for you, because I really feel like that was one of the most special sections of the whole movie. But
okay, yeah, that was my favorite one. What you're talking about, that was my favorite one. When did you last see this?
When I told you about it, which was I feel like it was 3-4 weeks ago, maybe it was a little bit longer.
Okay.
So I rewatched it on Amazon at that point.
About a month ago.
Yeah.
So there is dialogue in it.
In that one, yeah.
Yeah. Some of because that one, and I think maybe a little bit in some other random one, Tale of Two Robots, I think it was called, or the something Invasion. There's like in one where but this specific one with the robot, I thought probably had the best story, because it's about this guy who basically is controlled by his job, and he's constantly being reminded that, he has this little clock that comes and reminds him that he has to go back to work, and then he sneaks into this little space, this like old abandoned space, and will grab robot parts from other abandoned trash robots. And robots are totally not respected in this world for the most part. They show, like, I think at the beginning they show kids like stealing some robot's head and kicking it around. And so he sneaks off. He makes this like basically this female counterpart, and I think there's the part where he realizes what he created was quote unquote like an abomination in a way, because it loves him basically because he goes up to him and like like nuzzles on his back when he's looking at this other toy, and he's like, "Whoa!"
Yep.
And then they don't show what happens until the end of, which I think was really cool, because they kind of hint at it, like him, obviously spoilers, but destroying her, and they don't really show it at the end, and it's like it's really kind of a sad story about him, and then
super sad.
And
and
disappears with her into the sunset at the end. That's the only part I'm like, okay, what is that? I
don't know.
I
don't know if he actually. I don't know if he actually does disappear with him, or if he's imagining that she comes back. Yeah.
Well, at first he is, and then the wife comes out. That's where it gets weird, because the wife sees him walking away with her, apparently, and maybe he just never existed and she's crazy. I don't know, or he died.
Off they go, apparently.
All right, bye, husband. With your robot friend.
The thing that I think, again, the whole reason why I feel like this is an important conversation is like these ideas were just so complex emotionally. These are not like, this is not like a black and white moral story. It's like there's complexities to like what it means to be a human being, and how we think and feel and how we experience the world around us. And like, he had a wife, but he like wants to go and like basically live his last few years with this like robot creation,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like to like the, and if you look at through the lens of like normal everyday kind of status quo society, that might be an abomination. It might be like, oh, how preposterous or whatever. But like, I love the fact that anime is not afraid to just explore all possible human outcomes. You know what I mean? It's like, and even otherworldly outcomes. Like it's like we were saying before, like there are no limits. There are no kind of boundaries. There's no faux pas or taboos. Like it's all on the table as for possibility.
Yeah, it's another example, because this also came out in '87 in Japan and 91, I believe, in America, and it just shows how they were ahead of us by leaps and bounds in terms of censorship. They didn't have any censorship issue, and that's like the same thing for a lot of like Europe, or other like countries, continents.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's I think a lack of censorship promotes more progress, right? So that it was probably indicative of the fact that there hadn't been censorship to get to that point, where they were, right? It's like they wouldn't have been able to push these boundaries to get to a Ghost in the Shell without kind of like starting to explore those ideas. Because the idea, like, not to get like into the idea of censorship, but like if you aren't censoring things and you do kind of explore these options, humans will naturally like put things into a category of, good or bad, or like use it, don't use it. But if you have the censorship, well, you have less things to choose from to say use it or don't use it, because you're already starting with a limited set of ideas. So when it comes to Japanese animation, I think that because of the fact that they were so willing to just be like, let's have a guy build a robot, and she loves him, but then he kills her, and then at the end he loves her.
Very adult themes, and
yeah,
I know all these are movies, but they also, like DBZ is an example of like that was aired on TV, and they're showing blood, child nudity, that little Gohan, like Goku, like nude in the original Dragon Ball. So it's not like it was just for the movies. It's like
right.
A lot of this stuff was aired on TV before,
and that was made for kids.
Exactly.
That was made for kids because it was like you shouldn't be ashamed kind of thing. So cool. Yeah. So that's my second one. And I'll let you kick off the third one.
Yeah, I'll just add that the second one, the Robot Carnival, I did enjoy a lot, and I did notice that some of the music even had sounded like Final Fantasy, some parts of it, which was kind of neat. But yes, the onto the last one that we both share. It's a very popular, well-known animated film, if you will, cinematic event that I just dropped. Kira. Dun, 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 dun. Whatever
only
the
the highest
is.
production quality for us.
The Blu-ray copy that I bought actually probably last year, And I think maybe next time I won't use a background, but I haven't even opened it yet. This one was 2000 and something. What version is this? I don't know. But yeah, Akira. That's the one that kind of molded us, and it might have been the first one I actually saw, which is why we kind of saved it for the end.
Yeah, and I don't remember what order I saw them of these three, which they were. I could actually probably look it up, or even I remember taping it because I was so excited. I think they re-aired it, and I remember getting it on tape and rewatching the movies. But yeah,
1988. This came out in 89 in America, I believe. That's what I wrote down. And I think my older brother introduced me. I tried asking him, and he's like, "I don't remember those days, man." I was like, okay, but I'm pretty sure he was really into anime scene before me, and I'm almost positive that he introduced me to this film, and I was just like taken back. There's just so much going on in terms of story, blood, violence, crazy action, crazy weird animation that I've never seen before. I mean, things turning into giant blob beasts and yeah, very creative masterpiece in my mind that kind of a lot of anime fans I'm sure agree with in their own way, whether they hold it to high regard or not. It had a big effect on people.
Totally. This is another example of one where when I watched it as a child, it was too much for my little child brain to really comprehend what I was experiencing. I mean, the themes in this really are about pushing the envelope of the next evolutionary step for humanity and our physical bodies being unable to handle the power of this next evolutionary jump. And I just didn't get it. Like I couldn't even, it was another one. It was very dialogue heavy. It's very long. I mean, the original, I don't know if you can see the runtime on there, but
this one, it's about 2 hours. 2 hours and 4 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So 2 hours and 4 minutes as, a 12, 13-year-old kid, whatever I was at the time. That was just it was just too much like heavy dialogue. And like, there are so many kind of ins and outs and again, very political. There's a lot of kind of geopolitical elements to the storyline. But it's like, at the end of it, asking yourself like, what is Akira? It's like, okay, well, yeah, it's the little boy or whatever. But like, there is a degree of like, what did I just watch? By the time the first, I feel like the first time you run through it, you're like, what? I know I loved that. It was amazing, but like, what exactly, was that? It was definitely one where I had to watch it quite a few times. And more recently, I've read the mangas. I have actually the box set of the mangas behind me, and I have a few of the other versions that they've released over the years. And that actually gets into so much more detail than the actual animation does.
I was going to say, you probably know more than me or anybody I know about Akira because you have those giant mangas and collector's edition stuff going on back there. I see a lot of stuff that says Akira, to be honest with you. Oh no, he lost him. I think I exploded Andrew. He went into another dimension. See if I can get him back. Oh. All right, we're back. We lost Andrew for a moment there. Don't worry about it, but he's back. And we're talking about Akira. He's got a lot of Akira stuff behind him.
Yeah, sorry about that. Phone unfortunately died, even though I started with a full battery. Apparently it's time for a new one. So yeah, we were talking about Akira. I was talking about the fact that, I do have quite a bit of Akira merchandise because I think I, got into it at such a young age. It was one of the kind of things that was pretty impactful. And, Tom was showing off his Ghost in the Shell Blu-ray earlier. And actually, I have actually quite a few copies of Akira, and he has Akira as well. So I have the first version of Akira I ever bought was the 2001 VHS release.
THX digitally mastered.
Oh, it's just the coolest technology. Tom actually had, and I believe he got this at Anime Crash.
I think
he had
so.
The original, and these actually have two different, because when you have VHS, you only had one audio option. But this has the original soundtrack and the original voice acting, which I prefer.
That's a very important copy for sure.
Yeah,
I love the Neo Tokyo is about to explode.
yeah, so cool, so cool. And then I ended up getting the 2001. This is the original DVD that came out, or it might have been the special edition. But and then I also have the same Blu-ray that Tom showed. And because I'm such a crazy person, they I think it was Best Buy. Best Buy released a steelbook,
yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Reflective cover, and then most recently, I got the Ultimate Edition, which is
dun 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 dun
4K Blu-ray.
Holy crap! You got a 4K TV?
Yeah.
Holy snikes!
Yeah, and it comes with an art book and the discs for the watching.
I'm loving that
anyway.
red coat. Can you go back to a couple of them? There's one where they say both. There's a couple of them where they say thumbs up at the very top on both. Is that Roger and Ebert?
It's Ebert
and Roper.
Yeah, Ebert and Roper.
Okay, that's when they changed.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. Like 2 or 3 of them say thumbs up, and I'm like, okay, relax with the thumbs up. Yeah.
But, which these are basically the same version, even though it's a different cover. It's the same release.
And the VHS, that one is so unique in its own right. Just like the cover art is just him instead of like this like very dramatic poster art. It's just him, like it's like a cell from the show, like the movie.
It's awesome.
What's the back look like? Oh, that's right.
You got the main clown on it. It's pretty sick.
The tears when he's writing, he's like, I just like this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. I forget where we left off and actually talking about Akira in and of itself, but it to kind of close out the whole concept that we were talking about, like it has everything that makes anime special. You know, everything that to this day I look for in an anime. It has the cerebral, complex concepts. It has the beautiful animation. I put it on the 4K version just to like see what the difference was, which there was actually a pretty substantial difference from even the Blu-ray, which is cool. But even when in that first scene when number 24, I think it's number 24, he screams and all the glass shatters. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So during that scene, all this glass shatters and like a giant like beer tower comes crashing down the building. I was like looking very closely at the animation, and like you see very often in Dragon Ball Z when like all the rocks are coming around him or there's a lot of particles on the screen, they'll use the repeat animation or like when the hair is blowing and it's just like five frames recycled kind of thing. When you see this one frame of all the glass coming down, it's like each piece of glass is like individually animated, and it's just like that's what those small little details are what give it a special feel that other animations where they're cutting corners. Akira was just not cutting corners. It's all just very, very painstakingly animated, which is super cool.
And especially details like that and how they even animate glass is amazing in itself, because you're not seeing the outline. It's just like a lot of it is just amazing how they even come up with all these designs and all these fine little details. Like this one, like all the mechanical parts, like when he makes his final transformation, it's just amazing. All like the little intricate details of line art and coloring and just,
and
sound effects too.
And it's formless too, right? Like the fact that like they're building this form from scratch, like just from imagination, right? It's like when you make a figure, it's like, okay, well, it's a circle and then it's a couple of rectangles and there's some sticks that come off it. It makes a person. But like when you start to imagine an amorphous blob that has like, sections of like a bunch of like fingers all grouped together, kind of shooting outward, like you really have to like visualize that in your head and then make it a reality. Like that's another area that I think is really awe-inspiring, that it's just nothing. It's like nothing else you've ever seen before.
Yeah, I'd love to see the storyboards, all the storyboard drawings for this movie. One of my friends that I met here, he's not huge into anime, but he always had he has kind of a silly perspective where this movie he tried to watch and he can't get through it because there's too much yelling. I think this is an interesting thing to talk about because a lot of animes do this thing, and I think it is a little bit highlighted in this where they're like, Kaneda, I'll get you,
Yeah.
ah.
Tetsuo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be a little too much sometimes, but what are you gonna do? We love it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another thing to talk about as far as kind of barrier to entry for a lot of people with anime is that the English dubbed versions of anime is an acquired taste. And I can't even necessarily say it's like a good bottle of wine or a fancy whiskey or something like that because I don't think it's really all that refined.
Yeah.
The end, it's more like you almost have to shut a certain part of your brain off and just kind of accept it as how it is. When you really kind of look at that part of it too closely, it's like, wow, this is truly terrible. Like it's just not.
Yeah. Because a lot of times they're trying to match the words with the mouth.
Right.
I feel so they're trying to choose a word that is similar but also fits like the animation in a way.
Yep.
You could tell that even in really well-voiced movies like the ones Disney's kind of produced, like the Mononoke and Studio Ghibli or Ghibli. I've heard some people calling it Ghibli for some reason.
Well, I've also heard people calling GIFs now because
that's like that.
And it's like the G stands for graphic, moron.
That's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, I like to say Ghibli. It sounds better. Do you say Ghibli or Ghibli?
I say Ghibli.
Doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't.
Studio Ghibli.
Doesn't at all.
What does that even mean? Who cares? We'll never know. Nobody knows.
Probably somebody's name. It's probably somebody's name, which means there probably is a right answer to this, and it's Ghibli.
Well, this is totally off topic, but the fact that Nintendo said that NES is the way to say NES, but I've always said NES and I've always said SNES, and I will never say SNES and I will never say NES. That's just insane.
I will say
it's NES like a sneeze.
Referring
SNES.
I will say NES when referring to the Earthbound character NES, but I will say NES when I'm referring to the Nintendo Entertainment
Thank
System.
you.
So,
yes.
One clarification there.
Yeah, but they interviewed one of the main guys. I forget who it was, and they're like, "Oh, it's NES," and I thought he was kind of trolling, but whatever. This is a tangent.
Well, whatever. It's not even in like their native language, so it's kind of weird that they have an opinion on it.
Yeah, they're probably just I don't know, whatever. So I forgot where that was going, but I think it had to do with acting in like American acting, English acting. But
yes.
You know what? I'm curious about how they do those trail light effects in animation.
That is very cool, and the illumination of like the signs and stuff as they're scrolling through the city. There's like those like illuminated like advertisements within the city, which is really cool. I always like how do they make the light, like there's no form on it, there's no lines around it really, it's like kind of illuminated. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they do that, if that's something to do with computer technology or not, but I really have no idea, because you see a lot with like lasers when they shoot lasers and it's like super bright colored like neon. So
I do think it's like similar to how, you know, some painters are able to paint light. It's similar to that where they're using, you know, blended like light colors to make it look like it's like iridescent or like it's like made out of light or something like that. But
something to look into.
Something, yes, for sure, when we make our own animation, which you have done many times. But
I'll do it.
Yeah, to embark on. So yeah, I mean, Akira was truly I think the anime that I think for both of us like really stuck, you know, like it's definitely, even all these years later, you know, I watched Robot Carnival. I very much enjoyed it. That was great. Vampire Hunter D always has a special place in my heart. They came out with a newer one. That one's amazing as well. But Akira it's more than just a, hey, I'm the guy and I'm really tough and I'm going to battle all these bad guys. You know what I mean? Like it has a story to tell. It stands a test of time. It's, you know, relevant for someone who's a teenager who's like kind of, you know, just kind of uncovering and exploring the world around them, as well as, you know, sad adults like us who still haven't figured the world out around them. So, you know, I really love the fact that it's something that I found at such a young age, but it's still something I just love going back to every single time.
Absolutely. And I have to mention this. people, a lot of the people that worked on Robot Carnival actually worked on Akira. There's at least like 6 of the directors were on the animation team for Akira, which I thought was interesting. And your little tidbit where they had a Tetsuo and a Akira or Kaneda cameo in Robot Carnival, which I missed, but you sent me a screen grab of it.
Yeah, hopefully we can get that. We can put that in this video just to show it.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Like, and the first time I watched Robot Carnival, I mean, it's a throwaway scene. They're like walking through a carnival, of all places, and and Kaneda and Akira like literally just for a moment in the shot, just kind of like step through and
just kind of pass by really quickly.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was other things. That's why I mentioned the Final Fantasy, which I think was in that same, because was that the episode where the girl gets like with the necklace, loses her necklace and a robot picks it up?
Yeah, and he's part of like a theme park employee, and you think he's a robot, but then he turns out that he's a man.
Yeah, something weird happens,
and then they fall in love, and then he battles the big robot.
The big robot.
And then
it's all like some sort of metaphor for something else, though, because I don't think any of that was real.
I have no idea.
But anyway,
it was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Was that it? Akira.
That's it.
Akira, it's a very popular thing for us, especially when you see it at our young age. It was very impacting.
It really was. It was definitely. I don't remember which order I saw these 3 movies in. I think you were talking about that a little bit earlier. But
I'm pretty sure I saw Akira first, and then probably Ninja Scroll, and then Ghost in the Shell.
I mean, yours are actually all very, very heavy hitting. Like, I feel like they all kind of share that. Like, there's like something unique and different about each one of them that like really kind of like pushes the envelope for each one of those. I feel like Robot Carnival, again, like because I didn't probably fully understand it as a kid, like it didn't have that same kind of oomph that like a Ninja Scroll or a Ghost in the Shell would have. And Vampire Hunter D, I think, is tame by comparison to a Ghost in the Shell or a Ninja Scroll. So it's kind of cool that the first 3 that you saw were these like kind of tour de force experiences, you know, where like each one of them brings something a little bit different to the table. And even Ghost in the Shell is kind of a level up from Akira as far as, you know, the fact that it came out a decade later almost, and the animation was way better, and the you know, it starts to again kind of explore the concepts of like what does it mean to be human.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a common theme in a lot of these animes, like where it's like, you know, even in that Robot Carnival short where the guy kind of makes this humanoid counterpart or whatever, at what point, you know, when they start to think and feel, are they any different than a person is? So
yeah,
really cool stuff. And
definitely some cool stuff.
Been harder to find more, you know, modern animes that I enjoy as much, but you know, these older ones that we're talking about will always have a place and always be fun to revisit.
Oh, for sure. And I was going to bring up Record of Lodoss War just because it was one of the early animes I saw, and it was an OVA series that one of my old friends had satellite TV and could get like these like obscure channels. Yeah. And that was just one of them. And I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this. So I'm trying to, because throughout this like, while we were thinking about this, I was trying to pinpoint when it was the first thing I ever saw was, and I almost think that was it. So I don't know.
Very cool.
But yeah, I think that's it then.
So next episode we'll do a little bit of a breakdown of our experience with DBZ. I mean, Dragon Ball Z is another major influence that the two of us share.
Yeah, so this was the movies, and now I think going into DBZ is that's a big hitter in terms of anime and affecting us, because I mean, obviously, look at us. This is how we met. That's how we met. Those fools. What were we thinking? Yeah, next up, Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, lots of cover there. I mean, we could talk about the comparison of the animation, even through the you know, the fact that we had to watch the Frieza saga 15 times before we saw anything else.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect to it, is it being aired in America, and
Yeah,
that's something we're gonna have to really talk about.
yeah, lots to talk about there. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Well, there you have it. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for watching Robots After
Thanks,
All.
everyone.
We're
See you guys
robots,
soon.
right? Oh, whoops.
We are robots after all.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. Did we win?